In theory, we celebrate goodness, integrity, kindness, honesty. These values are etched into our cultural narratives, taught in schools, praised in movies, and quoted in commencement speeches. But in the real world, the world of office politics, social media algorithms, corporate ladders, and competitive relationships, what actually gets rewarded isn't always virtue. It's strategy. It's the ability to read a room, to say the right thing at the right time, to subtly negotiate power, and to project confidence even when it's hollow. We like the idea of good people rising to the top, but reality often paints a different picture. Those who succeed are typically the ones who know how to navigate complexity, not necessarily with integrity, but with calculation. That's what makes Prince Myshkin's story in Dostoevsky's The Idiot so jarring. He isn't dumb. He's just unwilling to play the game. He speaks from the heart, offers compassion without strings attached, and lives by moral clarity in a society built on blurred lines. And for that, people don't admire him. They ridicule him. His goodness makes others uncomfortable because it disrupts the social code of performance and self-interest. His tragedy lies not in who he is, but in what the world chooses to see in him. The question is, how often do we do the same? There's something quietly unsettling about encountering a truly good person. Not just someone who's polite or well-mannered, but someone whose kindness is unfiltered, whose honesty is unflinching, and whose compassion isn't calculated. In theory, we admire these people. We call them inspiring, noble, even saintly. But in practice, their presence can feel disarming, even threatening. Why? Because true goodness holds up a mirror, and not everyone is ready to face their own reflection. When someone like Prince Myshkin enters the room, he doesn't criticize or condemn. He simply is. But in being so unapologetically sincere, he unintentionally exposes the layers of artifice in those around him. His kindness highlights their selfishness. His honesty makes their manipulation obvious. His forgiveness challenges their grudges. That's why people often recoil, not from him, but from what he makes them feel about themselves. Psychologists call this cognitive dissonance, that uncomfortable tension we feel when confronted with a truth that clashes with how we want to see ourselves. And so instead of leaning into that discomfort, people reject the source of it. They label it unrealistic, impractical, foolish. But the real question isn't whether goodness is foolish. The real question is, why does it make us so uneasy? Perhaps it's because deep down, we know that goodness challenges not just our behavior, but our identity. There is a quiet kind of rebellion that doesn't come with fists or slogans, but with sincerity. In a world where everything feels transactional, where every compliment might be a strategy, and every favor a future debt, there's something deeply unsettling, almost radical, about a person who is good without a reason. Imagine that, someone who gives without expecting a return. Someone who tells the truth without calculating how it will be received. Someone who forgives, again and again, not because it benefits them, but simply because it's right. It sounds noble, but in reality, it's dangerous, because people like that don't just challenge systems, they unravel them. They make others feel exposed, unguarded, defenseless. That's what Prince Myshkin does in The Idiot. He walks into a society obsessed with power and appearance. And he doesn't play along. He doesn't flatter. He doesn't scheme. He simply exists. And in doing so, he quietly destabilizes everything around him. The people don't know what to do with him. He's not a threat in the conventional sense, but he is a threat to the illusion everyone has agreed to uphold. And so they push him away. Not because he's wrong, but because he's too right. That's the twist. goodness, when it's pure, doesn't inspire applause. It inspires fear. And the most dangerous person in the room is often the one who expects nothing at all. There's a cruel irony in the world's response to goodness. It doesn't just ignore it. It punishes it. We're told that kindness is strength, that love conquers all, that goodness always finds a way. But what if that's a lie we tell ourselves to feel safe? Because the truth no one wants to say out loud, is that being good often leads to suffering. Look closely, and you'll see it everywhere. The selfless friend who's always there for others, but is left behind when they need help. The honest employee passed over for promotions because they don't play dirty. The gentle soul who forgives everyone and is betrayed again and again. Prince Myshkin lives this truth in The Idiot. He loves without limits. He forgives without bitterness. And for that, he isn't cherished. He's destroyed. Not because he fails to be good, but because the world can't handle that kind of purity. And here's where the suspense deepens. Because you keep waiting for redemption, for justice, for some final reward to make his suffering worthwhile. But it never comes. There's no triumphant twist, no poetic payoff. Just silence, just pain. And yet, something deeper lingers, something haunting. Because even though Myshkin is broken, his goodness endures. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't need a victory lap. It doesn't even need to be understood. It just is. And that's the unsettling revelation Dostoevsky leaves behind. True goodness isn't validated by the world. It's validated by its own existence. It's not about outcomes or recognition or winning the game. It's about choosing light in a world that prefers shadows. That choice won't make you popular. It won't make you powerful. But it will make you real. And maybe, just maybe, that's the only kind of strength that truly lasts. Quiet, unshakable, and unbending in the face of cruelty. A strength that suffers, but never surrenders. It's the question that haunts every heart at some point. The moment when idealism meets reality. When compassion collides with survival. Is it better to be good or to be wise? Not book smart wise, not street smart wise, but world wise, sharp, guarded, calculated. It's the choice we're all silently making every day. Do you tell the truth or say what's safest? Do you give without expectation or protect your time and energy? Do you open your heart or armor up? Because in this world, wisdom often means self-preservation, and goodness means exposure. That's the tragic tension Dostoevsky unravels in The Idiot. Prince Myshkin chooses goodness, not strategy. He chooses love, not leverage. And the world devours him for it. But here's where the suspense thickens, because you start wondering, what if he had chosen differently? What if he had learned to play the game just a little? Would he have survived? Would he have saved himself from heartbreak? Would he have mattered more, or mattered less? That's the terrifying gamble. You can protect yourself by adapting. You can climb higher by compromising. But in doing so, what part of yourself do you leave behind? Myshkin's story offers no easy answers. There's no shining reward for his virtue, no neat moral wrapped in a bow. Just a haunting mirror held up to all of us. And what it reflects isn't just who Myshkin is. It's who we are when no one's watching. When the world pushes us to be clever, will we choose to be kind? When life demands we toughen up, will we still dare to be soft? Because the real question isn't whether goodness is wise. The real question is, are we willing to suffer to stay true to ourselves? That's the quiet, shattering power of Dostoevsky's message. In a world that teaches you to survive by changing who you are, goodness becomes the most dangerous, most courageous choice of all. We've been told a comforting lie, that if you're good, truly good, life will reward you. That kindness circles back, that compassion is always returned, that doing the right thing will eventually lead to peace, love, recognition. But what if that's just a story we tell ourselves to make the pain easier to bear? What if the truth is darker and far more profound? What if goodness isn't about what you get, but who you refuse to stop being, even when the world gives you nothing in return? This is the cruel beauty at the heart of the idiot. Prince Myshkin gives everything, his love, his trust, his grace, and gets shattered in return. He is not rewarded. He is not vindicated. There is no final applause, no justice served. He is left in ruins. And yet, he never changes. He never becomes bitter, never learns to lie, never trades light for armor. Because to him, goodness isn't currency, it's identity. That's where Dostoevsky strikes the deepest nerve. In a world obsessed with outcomes, promotions, likes, applause, power, he asks, what if the truest strength is in refusing to let the world deform you? What if the most heroic thing a person can do is remain soft in a world built to harden them? There's a suspense in that choice, a quiet, slow-burning tension. Because you know what it will cost. You know the world won't clap for it. But maybe that's the point. True goodness doesn't need validation. It doesn't keep score. It simply endures, unyielding, unshaken, even when it stands alone. And that's the paradox. It's the most vulnerable path, and yet the most indestructible. Because when the noise fades, the masks fall, and the lights go out. What remains is not what you've gained, but who you've dared to be. And in that final reckoning, maybe goodness is the only thing that was ever truly real. In a world that often rewards sharp instincts, polished appearances, and strategic thinking, the quiet power of goodness can feel outdated, like a virtue from another era. But Dostoevsky's message in The Idiot still rings true today. Being a good person isn't about being perfect or being praised. It's about staying rooted in who you are, even when the world gives you every reason not to. In modern life, we're constantly pulled in different directions, told to toughen up, to get ahead, to protect ourselves by being less vulnerable, less trusting, less kind. But what if the real strength lies in resisting that pressure? What if the most courageous thing you can do is remain compassionate in a culture that often confuses kindness with weakness? The lesson here isn't just philosophical, it's deeply practical. In your work, your relationships, your daily choices, ask yourself, am I acting from fear or from character? It's easy to let the world chip away at your values. It's harder, but far more meaningful, to hold on to them, even when no one notices. And maybe that's the challenge Dostoevsky presents to us all, to live in a way that doesn't depend on applause, recognition, or reward, but on integrity, empathy, and truth. Not because it guarantees success, but because it's the only way to live with peace in your heart. At the end of the day, people may forget what you achieved or how impressive you appeared, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. They'll remember your grace, your compassion, your willingness to be real in a world full of masks. That's your legacy, not your resume, not your bank account, not your social media following, just your light. And whether you dared to let it shine, even when it cost you. Because sometimes, the quietest choices are the most powerful of all.